A single flight, a split-second decision, a choice fueled by hate. What happens when a woman, wrapped in designer clothes and armored with privilege, refuses to sit next to a young black girl, believing she is unclean? What she doesn't know is that her world is about to be shattered. She's not just on any flight, and the woman she just insulted isn't just any passenger. She's about to learn that karma doesn't send a warning text. It deplanes you in front of the world. Stay with us as we unravel the story of Eleanor Vance and the worst and last flight of her life. The Tom Bradley International Terminal at LAX was, in Eleanor Vance's opinion, a swirling cesspit of mediocrity, a vulgar soup of unironed, untailored, and uncologned humanity. It wasn't just the smell, a nauseating accord of stale Cinnabon, burnt coffee, anxiety sweat, and the faint chemical tang of industrial cleaning fluid failing to mask the odor of too many people in one place. It was the sight of it all. The floors, a once proud terrazzo, were scuffed and stained, bearing the sticky residue of 1,000 spilled sodas. A child, his face a grotesque mask of strawberry ice cream, shrieked a repeating, glass-shattering note of despair, while his mother placidly scrolled through her phone. People in sweatpants in public, shuffled by in foam flip-flops, their heels cracked and grey. Eleanor, however, was an island of sterile perfection, an Arctic ice floe of superiority. She was not so much wearing her cream-coloured Chanel boucle suit as she was wielding it. It was a weapon of socio-economic dominance, the one she'd personally selected from the runway in Paris just 3 months prior. A cascade of graph diamonds, worth more than the combined annual salaries of everyone in her immediate vicinity, glittered at her throat. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled into a chignon so tight it seemed to physically pull the permanent aristocratic condescension onto her face. She was not just flying, she was making an appearance, a favour she was bestowing upon the lowly citizens of air travel. Her red-soled Louboutin heels clacked an angry, staccato rhythm on the terrazzo floor, a sound that announced both her arrival and her displeasure. She was berating her assistant, Tiffany, over her diamond-encrusted iPhone, her voice a low, well-projected hiss that cut through the terminal's dull roar. "I don't care if the caterer has a family emergency, Tiffany," she hissed, loud enough for the tired family in the matching Disney-themed shirts to hear and flinch. What am I paying him for? His feelings? I am paying him to place tiny, exquisite canapes on silver trays for the Vance Foundation gala, not to sit by a hospital bed and coddle his sick grandmother. Is she dying? No. Then tell him to get a grip, or I will personally ensure he never caters so much as a dog's birthday party in this state again. Fix it, or you'll be the one with a job emergency. I'm sure I can find another girl to fetch my lattes and book my jet. She was flying Summit Air, Flight 112, LAX to JFK. First class, naturally. Seat 1A, the throne. She was the guest of honor at her own charity ball, the glistening, diamond-hard pinnacle of the New York social season. This flight was a minor, 5-hour inconvenience, a grubby little tunnel she had to pass through before her coronation. She ended her call with a dramatic tap of her talon-like, pearlescent fingernail on the screen. She sighed, a sound of profound suffering, and surveyed the boarding area for Gate 154. Her lip curled. It was a sea of them, the great, unwashed, the huddled masses yearning to breathe her air. Her gaze snagged on a trio sitting near the window, huddled together on the unforgiving metal chairs. They were the very picture of everything she despised. There was a young, dark-skinned woman. She was, in Eleanor's estimation, passable, but ruined it by wearing simple, professional-looking navy scrubs. Scrubs. On an airplane. The implication of germs, of sickness, made Eleanor's skin crawl. Next to her sat a nervous-looking Hispanic woman, her hands clutching a worn rosary, her lips moving in silent prayer. And between them, the centerpiece of the pathetic display, a small, pale boy who couldn't have been more than 8. The boy, Leo, was clutching a threadbare teddy bear, its one remaining eye staring blankly. He was visibly trembling. The young black woman, Amara, was speaking to him in a low, gentle voice, her hand on his shoulder. "It's okay, Leo. It's just a big bus with wings, a really fast bus that goes above the clouds. You'll see, it's beautiful. We're going to get you to Dr. Patel, and he's the best. He's going to make that little heart of yours strong as a superhero's, as strong as Iron Man's. How about that? I promise." The Hispanic woman, his mother Maria, whispered, "Gracias, Dr. Jackson. Gracias." Eleanor watched them with profound distaste. Dr. Jackson? A doctor? Unlikely. She was probably just a nurse, or more likely, a cleaner from the hospital who'd stolen the uniform. The entire scene reeked of poverty and illness. She sniffed, reached into her $10,000 Hermes Birkin bag, and pulled out a small, silver-capped bottle of jasmine-scented hand sanitizer. She slathered it on her hands, rubbing vigorously up to her wrists, as if to cleanse herself of their very presence in her line of sight. There now pre-boarding families with small children, and those needing extra assistance. A tinny voice crackled over the PA system. Amara gently helped Leo to his feet. Maria, his mother, stood with them, clutching their boarding passes. "That's us, champ," Amara said, with a brightness Eleanor was certain was fake. As they walked past, Leo, unsteady on his feet and overwhelmed by the crowd, stumbled. His worn teddy bear, snagged on his finger, swung out and brushed against the arm of Eleanor's chair. Before Amara or Maria could apologize, Eleanor recoiled, yanking her arm away and letting out a sharp, scandalized hiss, as if the toy were covered in acid, or worse, something sticky. "Watch where you're going," Eleanor snapped. Her voice wasn't just sharp, it was cruel. The little group froze. Amara, who had been focused on Leo, turned. She looked at Eleanor's face, twisted in a mask of pure disgust, and then at the frightened boy beside her, who now looked like he was about to cry. Amara's first instinct, the human one, was to snap back, but her second, the professional one, took over. She was not just Amara, she was Dr. Jackson, and her only priority was the terrified, critically ill child at her side. She took a breath. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't get angry. She simply met Eleanor's gaze with a calm, penetrating, and deeply unimpressed clarity. "I'm sorry," Amara said, her voice cool and steady. "He's just a little nervous about his first flight." "Then he shouldn't be traveling," Eleanor replied, not even looking at her, already digging into her Birkin for a disinfectant wipe. She began to scrub, with theatrical vehemence, the armrest of the gate chair. "This isn't a hospital ward, it's a public space." Amara just shook her head, a small, sad gesture. Her hand tightened on Leo's shoulder. "Come on, Leo, let's get you settled." Eleanor watched them board, a small, cruel smile on her face. Disgusting. The pre-boarding rabble cleared. The various zones of economy passengers were called, a parade of shuffling, overstuffed humanity. Eleanor waited, poised, like a heron waiting for the tide to recede, revealing the pristine sand beneath. Finally, the announcement she was waiting for. "We will now begin boarding our first-class cabin. We invite passengers in rows 1 through 4 to board at this time." Eleanor stood. It was a performance. She smoothed the front of her Chanel jacket, adjusted the diamonds at her throat, and picked up her Birkin. She did not walk to the line. She glided, arriving at the front, bypassing a man in a rumpled suit who had been about to step forward. Her very presence demanded primacy. She handed her boarding pass, the crisp, white cardstock of a first-class ticket, to the gate agent, David. David, a young man with a nervous energy and a tie that was slightly too tight, smiled. "Welcome, Mrs. He scanned it. The machine did not return the pleasant chirp of acceptance. It beeped, a short, negative, interrogative thwack. David's smile faltered. He scanned it again, rubbing the barcode on his sleeve. Thwack. "A problem, I'm sure," Eleanor said, her voice dripping with the kind of impatience that suggested he was the problem. The man in the rumpled suit was waiting behind her, tapping his foot. David's face paled. He was new. This was his first month working the premium gates at Tom Bradley, and he'd been warned about the diamond-level passengers. He typed furiously, his knuckles white. The name Vance flashed on his screen, along with a bright red flag. "Mrs. Vance, I am so terribly, terribly sorry," he began, his voice cracking. "It seems there was a last-minute equipment swap. The original Boeing 777 had a maintenance issue with the hydraulics. We've swapped to a 767. A perfectly safe aircraft, of course, but it has a different first-class configuration." "I'm sorry I don't speak airline, young man," Eleanor cut him off, her voice like ice. "Translate that into a language I understand." "What does that mean?" "It means, ma'am," David said, swallowing, "your seat." "One. It physically doesn't exist on this new plane. The cabin is smaller, and, oh God, it's completely full. Oversold, in fact." The blood drained from Eleanor's face, then returned in a hot, furious, crimson flush that clashed horribly with her suit. "What do you mean, full? I am a platinum diamond whatever you call it member. I paid $12,000 for that ticket. I am flying to my own gala. You will find me a seat." "Yes, ma'am, of course." "I'm trying," David typed, his hands shaking so badly he made 3 typos. The line behind Eleanor was now 5 people deep, all of them in suits, all of them looking annoyed. The pressure was mounting. "I'm looking. Okay. I found one. It's not in first, but it's the only seat left on the entire aircraft. It's 10C. It's in premium economy." He tried to sell it, his voice squeaking with false enthusiasm. "It's an aisle seat at least, more legroom than regular economy. And of course, we will refund the difference in fare, and offer you a $500 voucher for a future flight." He trailed off. He had offered a goddess a communion wafer. "Premium economy?" Eleanor's voice was not a shout. It was worse. It was a low, dangerous growl that promised retribution, lawsuits, and fiery professional death. The line behind her had stopped shuffling and was now actively listening. "You want me, Eleanor Vance, to fly in economy?" "It's premium, ma'am. The seat pitch is 38 inches. I don't care if it's lined with mink and has a king-sized bed and a personal butler. This is an insult. Who is in my seat? Who took my spot? Go and move one of the riffraff out of first class and put me where I belong. Move that man in the tracksuit. I saw him bored. His sneakers are filthy." "Ma'am, I can't do that," David said, his voice trembling. He felt a bead of sweat roll down his back. "The cabin is full of other Diamond members. They are all ticketed. This is the only seat. The only one. If you don't take it, the flight will be closing in 10 minutes. You'll miss the flight." That was the choice. Eleanor's mind, a cold, fast-working calculator, processed the options. 1. Refuse the flight, be stranded at LAX, miss her gala, the humiliation. The Post would have a field day. Her rivals, those backstabbing hyenas, would relish it. 2. Take the seat, suffer the indignity for 5 hours, arrive in New York, and then, from the comfort of her St. Regis suite, unleash a torrent of legal and financial hell so profound that this entire airline, from its CEO down to this trembling, incompetent child before her, would beg for her forgiveness. It was no choice at all. She would endure, and then she would destroy. She snatched the new, flimsy paper boarding pass from his hand. "This is not over," she spat. "I will have your job. I will have your manager's job. I will speak to Marcus Thorne himself. I will own this entire pathetic airline by the time I land. You will be back to serving Cinnabons by morning." She didn't wait for a reply. She stormed down the jet bridge, her heels echoing her rage. It was a walk of shame, and for every clack of her Louboutins, she mentally added another 0 to the lawsuit she would file. Eleanor burst through the curtain onto the aircraft. She'd boarded, turned left for first class, and then stopped dead, forcing a flight attendant, Sarah, to stop short to avoid a collision. "Welcome aboard," Sarah began. "Where is Tennessee?" Eleanor snapped, waving the flimsy boarding pass as if it were a piece of soiled toilet paper. Sarah, a 20-year veteran with eyes that had seen everything from in-flight proposals to in-flight brawls, had a finely tuned radar for trouble. This woman in the Chanel suit wasn't a Category 5 hurricane. She was the meteor that caused the extinction. Sarah's practiced smile didn't waver. "Right this way, ma'am. Just past the curtain, in our premium economy cabin." Eleanor stalked past the curtain, separating the haves from the have-nots. Her lip curled in disgust. The air was different back here. It smelled of passengers. She moved down the aisle, her eyes scanning the row numbers. Row 8, row 9, row 10. She stopped. Her blood, which had been boiling, turned to ice. No, it was impossible. It was a joke. In 10A, the window seat, sat the little, pale, sick-looking boy, Leo. In 10B, the middle seat, her face half hidden by her hair as she helped the boy with his seatbelt, sat the black woman in the filthy scrubs. And 10C, the aisle seat, was empty. It was her seat. Eleanor Vance looked at the seat. She looked at Amara. She looked at the sick child, and she felt a cold, primal wave of revulsion so powerful it made her gag. She would be trapped. She would be marinating in their germs, their poverty, for 5 hours. She turned on her heel, her $4,000 shoe digging into the cheap carpet, and marched back to the galley, where Sarah was sorting pre-departure drinks. "Absolutely not." Sarah looked up from her manifest. "Pardon me, ma'am?" "I am not sitting there," Eleanor repeated, jabbing a diamond-encrusted finger back toward the cabin. "You need to move me. Now." "Ma'am, as I'm sure the gate agent explained, this is the only available seat on the aircraft. We are completely, 100% full." Sarah's customer service voice was firm, but the smile was gone. "Then move her," Eleanor hissed. She took a step closer, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial and deeply offensive whisper, as if she were doing Sarah a favor. "Move her, and her sick child. They shouldn't be in premium anyway. What's the point? Put them in the back. In the, the last row. By the toilets. I'm sure they're used to it. They're probably carrying something." Sarah's polite mask didn't just vanish. It shattered. Her training, de-escalate, accommodate, placate, was screaming in her ear. But the sheer, naked, unadulterated bigotry of the request short-circuited it. She had defended this airline against drunks, against brawlers, against creeps. This was worse. "Ma'am?" Sarah said, her voice now as cold and firm as the stainless steel galley. "I cannot move a passenger who has paid for her seat. Dr. Jackson and the patient she is accompanying are ticketed for those seats." "Dr. Jackson?" Eleanor let out a laugh like breaking glass. "That girl is a doctor." "Oh, don't be ridiculous. She's probably a janitor who stole those scrubs, a patient escort. Whatever. I am a Diamond member. I am Eleanor Vance. Move her." The cabin, which had been buzzing with the sound of people stowing bags and settling in, was growing quiet. The passengers in the rows nearest the galley, rows 8, 9, and 10, could hear every word. A man in 9C, a tech sales manager named Mr. Henderson, had been openly annoyed by Eleanor's tantrum at the gate. Now he was disgusted. He looked at the woman in the Chanel suit. He looked at the quiet, dignified black woman she was insulting. He discreetly angled his phone, resting it against the headrest in front of him, and pressed record. "Ma'am, you are now delaying our departure," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a low, final warning tone. "You have two choices. You can take your assigned seat at 10C, or we can deplane you here at LAX. The door is still open." Eleanor's eyes flashed. Deplane? Here? The humiliation, missing the gala, the victory she'd be handing to her rivals. It was unbearable. No, she would not be removed. She would conquer. "Fine," she spat. "But I am filing a formal complaint. Against you," she jabbed a finger at Sarah, "and against her." She turned, her shoulders rigid, and marched back to row 10. Amara and Leo had watched the entire exchange, Leo's eyes wide with fear, Amara's with a quiet, steely, and utterly exhausted resignation. Eleanor did not make eye contact. She stood over the aisle seat, her Birkin bag in her hand, and proceeded to perform a ritual of public cleansing. She pulled out her pack of Clorox wipes. The rip of the seal being broken echoed in the tomb-silent cabin. With a look of theatrical disgust, as if she were handling toxic waste, she began to scrub every visible surface of seat 10C. She scrubbed the armrest. She scrubbed the seatbelt buckle, her face contorted. She scrubbed the tray table latch. She scrubbed the plastic headrest. Then she turned. She took a new wipe, and she began to scrub the shared armrest between her and Amara. Her movements weren't just aggressive, they were practically violent, a physical performance of her revulsion. I can't be too careful," Eleanor said loudly, to no one in particular, but for everyone to hear. "You have no idea what kinds of diseases these people carry. Probably came from some village. It's a miracle they let them on the plane. The filth." The cabin was so quiet, the sound of the wet wipe on the plastic was the only thing anyone could hear. Mr. Henderson's phone was still recording, capturing it all. Amara, who had sat with her hands folded in her lap, her body angled away, finally spoke. Her voice was not loud. It did not carry the shrillness of Eleanor's, but it cut through the silence like a surgeon's scalpel. "My name is Dr. Amara Jackson." Eleanor paused, mid-scrub. "I am a board-certified pediatric cardiologist at UCLA. We are flying from Los Angeles, where I practice, to New York for a life-saving procedure for my patient, Leo. His mother is in seat 28B, as it was the only other seat available." Her voice was calm, clear, and dripping with an authority that had nothing to do with money. "The disease you're so worried about is called compassion. I suggest you avoid it, as it seems you have no immunity. The filth you're smelling is your own bigotry." Eleanor's face, caked in expensive foundation, turned a mottled, furious, incandescent red. How dare you? You people are always so aggressive. Please take your seat, Mum. Now." Sarah, the flight attendant, was there, her voice carrying the unmistakable, non-negotiable edge of a final warning. Eleanor, shaking with rage, threw herself into 10C, but the drama was not over. It was her final, petty, parting shot. She took her $10,000 Birkin bag, the one she had so carefully protected, and she jammed it onto the shared armrest, creating a physical wall between her and Amara. The bag's expensive tooled leather was not just on the armrest, it was over it, digging firmly into Amara's space, pushing into her side. "Excuse me," Amara said, after a moment of disbelief. "Your bag. It's on my seat." Eleanor, with a smug, cruel smile, put on her noise-cancelling headphones. "I can't hear you." Amara looked at the bag. She looked at Eleanor's smug, sideways glance. She looked at Leo, who was watching, terrified. She looked at Sarah, who was now forced to close the main cabin door. She sighed, a long, slow breath. She would not fight this. Not now. Leo was the only thing that mattered. She gently put her own simple canvas tote on the floor. The plane began its pushback. The battle was over. Or so Eleanor Vance thought. The first 2 hours of the flight were a masterclass in psychological warfare, and Eleanor Vance was a grand master. The Birkin wall was just the beginning. Eleanor was a master of the microaggression, though micro was hardly the word. She kept her elbow jammed out, claiming the entire armrest, forcing Amara to sit rigid and angled toward Leo, her shoulder aching. When she slept, her head lolled, not away, but directly into Amara's space, forcing Amara to lean uncomfortably against the boy she was trying to comfort. But the true performance began when the drink cart arrived. Sarah, the flight attendant, approached their row with a look of pure professional neutrality, though her eyes were tight. "Can I get you something to drink, Dr. Jackson?" Sarah asked, pointedly using Amara's title. "Just a water, please," Amara said. "And you, ma'am?" Sarah asked Eleanor. Eleanor pulled off her headphones with a dramatic sigh. "I will have champagne. The real stuff, not that sparkling garbage you serve the tourists, and make it a double. I've earned it." Sarah returned and, with a steady hand, passed the plastic cup of water to Amara. Then she passed the small green bottle and a glass to Eleanor. Eleanor poured it herself, her eyes glinting, and just as Amara turned to check on Leo, Eleanor accidentally sloshed the flute. It wasn't a small splash. It was a deluge. Drops of cold, sticky, expensive champagne splashed onto Amara's navy scrubs, soaking the sleeve and the thigh of her pants. "Oh dear," Eleanor gasped, her voice a symphony of fake concern. She daintily dabbed at her own sleeve with a napkin, though not a drop had touched her. Such turbulence. The air was perfectly, glassily smooth. Amara froze, the cold liquid seeping through to her skin. She looked at the dark stain on her scrubs. She looked at Eleanor's face, which was fighting, and failing, to hide a small, triumphant smirk. Amara simply took her own napkin, the one from her water, and began to blot her scrubs. "No problem," she said, her voice tight with a rage she refused to show. "Well, it's just awful," Eleanor said, settling back. "But then, I suppose you're used to spills, aren't you, in your line of work?" Eleanor smiled. She was winning. She then spent the next 30 minutes on the in-flight Wi-Fi, which she'd purchased with a loud, complaining sigh. She put in her headphones but talked at a shout, ensuring the entire cabin could hear her half of the conversation. It was a video call to her husband, Robert Vance. Robert, can you hear me? This connection is as ghastly as the service. You would not believe the day I'm having. No, the 777 had a problem, so they put me on this bus. In the back, Robert. Yes, the back. I'm surrounded by... Well, you can imagine. The clientele is just appalling. Amara, trying to keep Leo distracted with Finding Nemo on the seatback screen, heard every word. I'm next to one of them, the one from the gate. She's... Well, I'm sure she's sick. I think she's a nurse or an orderly. She has a sick child with her. Yes, I'll be suing, of course. Have legal draft a letter. It's a hostile environment. And call Marcus Thorne's office. His private office. Not his assistant, him. Tell him his airline is circling the drain. It's becoming a public health hazard. I've never been so disgusted. Summit Air is over. Amara's blood ran cold. Marcus Thorne. The casual, venomous way she used his name. The way she was attacking his company, his life's work, all because she'd been downgraded. She watched as Eleanor, finally satisfied, ended her call. She put on a silk eye mask, reclined her seat as far back as it would go, jamming it into the knees of the man behind her, and, within minutes, fell asleep. A delicate, whistling snore escaped her perfectly sculpted nostrils. Amara looked at the sleeping woman. She looked at the sleeping, trusting child beside her. Leo's head had slumped onto her shoulder, his breathing shallow but even. She felt a surge of cold, precise anger. Not the hot, messy kind that Eleanor specialized in, but the clean, bright, focused anger that fueled 14-hour surgeries. This wasn't about her, Amara, anymore. This was about Leo, who was frightened. This was about Sarah, who was being abused. And this was about her husband, whose name this woman dared to drag through the mud. She pulled out her phone. She noted Mr. Henderson in the row ahead, who had been glancing back with a sympathetic look. He saw her phone and gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. He had it. He had it all on video. Amara opened her text messages. She had one new message from a contact, simply labeled M. M. Landed at JFK. Terminal is chaos. Where are you? My driver is waiting for you and Leo. Amara's fingers flew across the screen. Amara. Still in the air. SA-112. We have a problem. A passenger, Eleanor Vance, in 10C. She's been unprofessional. Unprofessional was the word she chose. Clinical. Precise. The reply was instantaneous. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared in a flash. M. Unprofessional. Amara, what did she do? Are you and Leo safe? Amara. We are safe. But she was racist, publicly. To me and to Leo. She assaulted me with a champagne flute. Well, splashed me. She's created an incredibly hostile environment. She scrubbed the seat with bleach. She's also, and I quote, suing and calling your private office to tell you your airline is circling the drain. A pause. Longer this time. The 3 dots appeared, vanished, appeared again. M. She's in 10C? Amara. Yes. The seat she was downgraded to. Another pause. Then the reply, which sent a chill down Amara's spine. M. Good. Stay calm. I am handling this. I am sending a full team to the gate. Do not engage with her. I'll see you in 30 minutes. Amara. Marcus. Please. Don't make a scene. It's not worth it. Leo is already scared. M. You are a board-certified pediatric cardiologist. You are traveling with a critically ill patient. She accused you of carrying diseases and assaulted you. A scene is exactly what this is worth. I'll be at the jet bridge. I love you. Put your phone away. Amara put her phone away. She looked out the window as the plane began its descent over the glittering, frozen in the dark sprawl of New York City. She gently squeezed Leo's hand. Almost there, champ, she whispered. Beside her, Eleanor Vance snored on, dreaming, no doubt, of lawsuits and social victories. The thud of the landing gear deploying was the sound that woke Eleanor Vance. She stretched, cat-like, a picture of smug, well-rested privilege. She peeled off her silk eye mask, glanced at the champagne-stained scrubs beside her, and sniffed. Finally, she huffed, already gathering her Birkin, already composing the scathing email to her legal team. As the plane taxied to the gate at JFK, the usual cabin chime dinged, signaling they had arrived. The seatbelt sign switched off. Eleanor was on her feet in an instant. She was a coiled spring of entitlement, ready to burst out of this peasant tube and back into her world. She was pushing past Amara, who was still gently waking Leo, to get her carry-on from the overhead bin. "Excuse me," Amara said. "We're trying to—" But before Eleanor could take a single step into the aisle, the captain's voice came over the intercom, not with the usual, mumbled, "Welcome to New York," but with a sharp, authoritative ex-military crackle. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Miller. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts immediately." The cabin, which had been a bustle of standing passengers, froze. "We are experiencing a delay at the gate. Port Authority police and airline executives are meeting our flight. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until the agents have boarded and the fasten seatbelt sign is turned off. I repeat, everyone will remain seated." A nervous, electric murmur rippled through the cabin. Police? Executives? This wasn't a customs check. This was a reception. Eleanor froze, one hand on the overhead bin. Her first thought was terrorism. Her second, and the one she settled on, was her. She scoffed, a dry, ugly sound. "It's probably for them," she muttered, gesturing with her chin to Amara and Leo. Her voice was loud enough for row 9 to hear. "Probably trafficking that child. I knew it. She didn't even look like a doctor." Amara just stared at her. The sheer, unadulterated venom. "You are a truly, deeply unwell woman." "We'll see who's unwell," Eleanor sneered, sinking back into 10C, a look of vindicated triumph on her face. "I can't wait to see them cuffed." The jet bridge connected with a heavy thump and a hydraulic hiss. The main cabin door opened, but nobody got off. Instead, 3 people got on. 2 were Port Authority officers in crisp, dark blue uniforms, their faces grim, their hands resting near their belts. The third was a woman in the sharpest, most severe black suit Amara had ever seen. Her face was a mask of polite, corporate fury. This was Catherine Reed, the head of in-flight operations for Summit Air's entire East Coast hub, and she was followed by a man. He was not in a suit. He was tall, impeccably dressed in dark jeans, a simple black cashmere sweater, and an aura of command so powerful it was a physical force. His photo was on the cover of Forbes that very month, under the headline, "The Sky is His, How Marcus Thorne Reinvented Air Travel." Eleanor Vance, who prided herself on knowing everyone who mattered, felt her stomach turn to ice. Her heart, which had been beating with smug satisfaction, suddenly hammered against her ribs with a new, cold emotion. Dread. She knew that man. She knew that man. Robert knew that man. He was the $500 million portfolio. Catherine Reed and the officers did not stop in the galley. They did not stop in first class. They walked, with a thunderous, purposeful stride, past the curtain and directly to row 10. The entire cabin was filming. The phones were up, open and unafraid. "Dr. Jackson," Catherine said, her voice clear, professional, and loud enough for all to hear. "I am Catherine Reed, head of operations. Are you and your patient, Leo, all right?" Amara unbuckled her seatbelt. "We are fine, Catherine. Thank you for meeting us." Eleanor's jaw was open. Dr. Jackson. She knew her name. Catherine then turned. She consulted her clipboard, though it was pure theatre. She then levelled an icy gaze on the woman in 10C. "Mrs. Eleanor Vance?" "Eleanor, sensing her power evaporating, tried one last desperate time to take control. She stood, her voice high and reedy. "Yes, it's about time. I am the one who called. I am the victim here. This woman," she pointed a shaking finger at Amara, "has been harassing me this entire flight. She's aggressive. And this flight attendant, Sarah, did nothing." "Ma'am," Catherine said, her voice cutting through the lies like a diamond, "we will be asking you to gather your belongings and come with us." "Good," Eleanor said, a wave of relief washing over her. They believed her. Of course they did. "To the first-class lounge, I assume. I have a long list of complaints, starting with that incompetent boy at the gate." "You will not be going to the lounge, Mrs. Vance," Catherine said. "You are being detained for interfering with a flight crew and for verbal assault against a passenger. We have over a dozen official complaints filed from the passengers around you via the in-flight Wi-Fi, not to mention a full, high-definition video of the boarding incident from Mr. Henderson in 9C. Mr. Henderson waved, his phone still held high. You can't be serious," Eleanor shrieked, the panic finally breaking through. "This is an outrage. I am Eleanor Vance. My husband is Robert Vance of Vance Capital. He knows your CEO. He's friends with Marcus Thorne." The man in the black sweater, who had been standing back silently, watching, his face a mask of cold fury, now stepped forward. He walked past Catherine. He walked past the officers. He looked past Eleanor, his eyes, full of a deep, protective love. Finding Amara's. His voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that silenced the entire plane. "Amara, are you okay?" Amara nodded, a small, tired smile touching her face. "I'm fine, Marcus." Eleanor Vance looked at the man. She looked at Amara. She looked at the name M on Amara's phone screen in her memory. Marcus. Marcus Thorne, the billionaire founder and CEO of Summit Air, the man on the cover of Forbes, the man whose private office she had just threatened to call. Marcus Thorne slowly turned his gaze from his wife, Dr. Amara Jackson Thorne, and leveled it at the woman in 10C. His face was not angry. It was something far worse. It was pure, cold, structural resolution. It was the face of a man who builds and destroys worlds. "You're right about one thing, Mrs. Vance," Marcus Thorne said, his voice lethally calm. "You will be talking to my office. My legal office." He leaned in just slightly. "But you seem to be confused. You don't know my CEO, you don't know my friends, and you sure as hell don't know my wife." The moment Marcus Thorne uttered the words, "You don't even know my wife," a new kind of silence fell over the cabin. It wasn't the silence of fear that Eleanor had commanded before. It was the silence of a vacuum, the sound of 150 people holding their breath as they watched a star collapse. Eleanor Vance's world, a universe she had meticulously constructed with diamonds, fear, and the power of her husband's name, didn't end in a slow decline. It ended in the 4.5 minutes it took her to be removed from Flight 112. Catherine Reed, the Summit Air executive, stepped into the silence. "Mrs. Vance," she said, her voice devoid of all emotion, "please gather your belongings. Now." The two Port Authority officers moved, one in front of her row, one behind, creating an impassable box. Eleanor was frozen. Her brain, which operated on a simple binary of predator and prey, had short-circuited. She was looking at Marcus Thorne, the billionaire, and Dr. Amara Jackson Thorne, the wife, and she could not compute. You, she stammered, her hand still on her Birkin bag. "Ma'am," one of the officers said, his hand gesturing firmly. "Let's go. We're not asking again." This was the walk. As Eleanor stood, her legs feeling like wet cement, the phones of the other passengers, which had been recording covertly, were now raised in brazen, open judgment. Every screen was a tiny, glowing eye reflecting her humiliation. She was forced to shuffle past Amara and Marcus. Amara would not look at her, her focus entirely on Leo, shielding him from the ugly spectacle. Marcus Thorne, however, watched her. He didn't look angry. He looked in a way that was far more terrifying, like a man signing a purchase order. It was a look of pure, dispassionate finality. As Eleanor was escorted up the aisle, a passenger in row 8, a man she had sneered at in the lounge, began to applaud. It was a slow, rhythmic, solitary clap. 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 Then another passenger joined, and another. By the time she reached the galley, the entire premium economy cabin was applauding her exit. This was the walk of shame. This was the sound of her social death. She stumbled onto the jet bridge, not as a first-class passenger, but as cargo. The officers led her into the terminal, where her humiliation was only beginning. The passengers from the plane, now deboarding, streamed past her. Mr. Henderson, the man from row 9, walked by, his phone still in his hand. He didn't even look at her. He was too busy uploading. The terminal and the viral spark. "This is an outrage. I am the victim," Eleanor shrieked at the Port Authority officers who were taking her statement at a small Formica desk near the gate. "That woman, she provoked me. She and her sick—" "Ma'am," the older officer said, not even looking up from his notepad, "you have been ticketed for creating a public disturbance and for non-compliance with a flight crew. We strongly advise you to sign the ticket and leave the airport." While Eleanor was still trying to use her name as a weapon, that very name was exploding across the planet. Mr. Henderson's video, titled "Disgusted Woman Cleans." Seat after refusing to sit near Black Doctor on Summit Air had been live for 10 minutes. It didn't just go viral, it was a viral detonation. 8:10 p.m. Tata, the video hits 50,000 views, mostly from the other passengers on the flight sharing it to their own feeds. 8:15 p.m. EST, a blue-check journalist from a major New York paper who happened to be on the flight, retweets it with the comment, "Just landed at JFK. Witnessed the most appalling racism I've ever seen. The woman in the video is Eleanor Vance." 8:20 p.m. ST. The name Eleanor Vance is cross-referenced with Summit Air and Marcus Thorne. The internet, a crowdsourcing engine of unmatched efficiency, finds the connection. 8:30 p.m. ST. The New York Post has a headline, "Socialite Inhale, Airline Karen. Eleanor Vance racially abuses CEO's wife, Dr. Amara Jackson Thorne." 8:45 p.m. ST. The video has 10 million views. The Daily Mail has a 12-photo spread of Eleanor at various galas, juxtaposed with grainy screenshots of her cleansing the armrest. The karma was no longer theoretical. It was trending #1, worldwide. The financial karma, a steakhouse execution. Robert Vance was at the grill in Midtown, in the middle of closing a $90 million real estate deal. He was a man of similar, though better hidden, prejudices as his wife. But he worshipped only one god: money. His phone, resting on the white linen, began to vibrate. He ignored it. It vibrated again, and again. A non-stop, furious buzzing. "Excuse me, gentlemen," Robert said, a flash of annoyance on his face. "The cost of being in demand." He walked to the bar, pulled out his phone, and saw 42 missed texts. Not from his wife, from his board of directors, from his CFO, from his largest clients. He clicked the first link, sent by his terrified head of PR. He watched the video. Robert Vance did not feel shame. He did not feel empathy for Amara. He did not feel anger at his wife's racism. He felt a cold, sharp, existential terror. He didn't see a bigot in a Chanel suit. He saw a $500 million portfolio, the Summit Air corporate account, the Summit Air executive travel plan, the personal accounts of Marcus Thorne himself, all of which were managed by Vance Capital. He saw the name Marcus Thorne. He heard his wife's voice. He looked at the face of the woman she was insulting, and he finally, horrifically, connected the dots. His wife had not just insulted a passenger. She had insulted the passenger. She had insulted the bank. His hands shaking, he made 2 calls. The first was to his head of PR. "Jeff, it's Robert. I don't care what it costs. Release a statement. Now. Vance Capital is appalled. We condemn this in the strongest possible terms. We are making an immediate $5 million donation to, I don't know, the NACP, and find out what hospital that doctor works for. We're donating to them too. The key phrase is, she does not represent the values of this firm. Got it?" The second call was to his divorce attorney, a man known in New York as the Shark. "David," Robert said, his voice a low, lethal whisper. "It's me. Remember that public disrepute clause we put in the post-nup? Well, it's Christmas. Pull the trigger. I want her assets frozen by morning. I want her out of the co-op. I want her gone. She just cost us $500 million. I want her ruined." He hung up, straightened his tie, and returned to the table, his face a mask of perfect, sociopathic calm. His life was now a damage control operation. His wife, Eleanor, was the first piece of damage to be controlled. The social karma, the blacklisting Eleanor, finally released from the terminal, her hands raw from where she'd been clutching her Birkin, was in a cab. Her phone, which she'd had on airplane mode, connected to the network. It was not a phone. It was a bomb. 3,000 notifications, texts, emails, voicemails. A text from her husband, "Lawyer, now." An email from the chair of the Met Gala. "Dear Eleanor, in light of the disturbing events, we have decided to rescind your invitation. No longer welcome." An email from her own Vance Foundation. "Emergency board vote. The board has voted unanimously to remove you. Effective immediately." But the worst was yet to come. She arrived at the St. Regis, the place she considered her New York home. She stalked up to the front desk, expecting the usual fawning. "I am Eleanor Vance, the presidential suite." The night manager, a man who had served her for a decade, looked at her with a face of perfect, polite granite. "Good evening, Mrs. Vance," he said. "I'm afraid we have a problem with the reservation." "I don't have a reservation. I have a standing booking," she snapped. "Yes, ma'am. That booking has been cancelled." "Cancelled? By whom?" "By us, Mrs. Vance," he said. His voice was quiet, but it was the loudest sound she had ever heard. The St. Regis brand, and the Marriott portfolio at large, has a zero-tolerance policy for the kind of public behavior we saw today. We are, unfortunately, fully committed, and we will be for the foreseeable future. We must ask you to leave." "You can't do this to me," she shrieked, and for the first time, she sounded not just angry, but scared. "We can, ma'am. We have." She was escorted out by hotel security, her luggage following her onto the sidewalk of Fifth Avenue. She was Eleanor Vance, and she was, for the first time in her life, homeless. The legal karma, the final checkmate. Eleanor Vance was a pariah. Her husband had filed for divorce, her assets were frozen, and the real-life story of the airline Karen was now the gold standard for public humiliation. But Marcus Thorne was not finished. 2 days later, a process server found Eleanor at a sad, mid-range hotel she'd been forced to pay for, with a dwindling credit card. He handed her a thick sheaf of documents. Summit Air was not just banning her, they were suing her, and it wasn't a PR stunt, it was a legal masterpiece. Count 1. Lifetime ban. The notice began by informing her she was permanently banned from Summit Air, but it went further. As she had insulted the CEO of the airline, she was now flagged across all partner networks, SkyTeam, Star Alliance, and One World. In 24 hours, Eleanor Vance had been added to a corporate no-fly list that effectively grounded her from 90% of the world's commercial air travel. Count 2. Civil complaint. They sued her for interference with a flight crew, a federal offense, willful and malicious slander, for accusing a doctor of carrying diseases, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, on behalf of Dr. Jackson, Leo, and the flight attendant, Sarah. Count 3. Restitution. This was the most brilliant and cruelest part. The suit detailed that Summit Air, as a gesture of goodwill, had already refunded every single passenger's ticket on Flight 112, and had issued each of them a $1,000 voucher for the hostile environment she had created. The lawsuit demanded that she pay that cost. They were not suing for a vague, large number. They were suing her for a specific, itemized bill for her own awfulness. The final line of the press release from Summit Air's legal team read, "Summit Air is not seeking punitive damages. All funds recovered from Mrs. Vance will be placed directly into the newly created Summit Air Dignity Fund, a charity providing free medical air transport for families in need. We are, in effect, forcing Mrs. Vance to pay for the kindness she so clearly lacks." She was checkmated. She had no money for a legal defense. Her husband's lawyer had already seized her funds. She had no social standing to rally support. She had no airline to fly away on. She was, quite literally, grounded. Her world reduced to the four walls of a 200-a-night hotel room, the cascade of karma having washed her entire life away. A single event can be a tremor or an earthquake. For the passengers of Flight 112, the incident in Row 10 was an earthquake, and the aftershocks continued to reshape the landscape for a year, fundamentally altering the lives of everyone involved. The karma, having arrived with the force of a final landing, was not content with a single moment of justice. It demanded a full and detailed accounting. Eleanor Vance's name, once a symbol of philanthropic power and social terror, had become a verb. To be an Eleanor was to be a public pariah, a living meme for bigoted entitlement. But the reality of her fall was far less glamorous than a meme. It was a slow, agonizing slide into a new, terrifying reality. Her first humiliation was not at the airport. It was in a cramped, beige-walled lawyer's office in Century City. Her husband, Robert Vance, had not even called her. He had filed for divorce from his car, somewhere on the 405, 10 minutes after the New York Times picked up the story. "A morals clause?" Eleanor had shrieked, the sound bouncing off the cheap drywall. She was facing a junior associate from Robert's firm, a young man who looked like he was still in college. "Mrs. Vance," the young man said, not meeting her eyes, "you signed a post-nuptial agreement in 2021. Paragraph 14b, the Public Disrepute and Morals Clause. It states that any action by one party that brings the family name and its business interests into public scandal, contempt, or ridicule forfeits all claims to spousal support and shared assets. That's for affairs, for drugs," she spat. "The language is intentionally broad, Mrs. Vance, and Mr. Vance's legal team is arguing that costing Vance Capital, its single largest client, Summit Air's $500 million portfolio in a single afternoon and becoming the global face of public bigotry qualifies as scandal and contempt. She was left with her maiden name, Eleanor Pruitt, and the contents of a single checking account. Her next lesson came at the hands of the market. The socialites who once feared her now wouldn't touch her with a 10-foot pole. She tried to liquidate her assets, the diamonds, the art, the row of Hermes Birkin bags that had once been her armor. She walked into the Real on Melrose, a place she had once shopped, and presented the very bag she had used to build a wall on the plane. The sales associate, a young woman with pink hair, looked from the bag to Eleanor's face. A flash of recognition, and then disgust crossed her features. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the associate said, her voice dripping with practiced, corporate-mandated politeness. "We're not accepting new consigners at this time." You know who I am," Eleanor whispered, horrified. "Yes, ma'am, we do. That's why we're not accepting your items. Our brand is built on aspirational luxury. You are. Not that." She was forced to sell the $10,000 bag to a shady pawnbroker in a strip mall for $800 in cash. This is how, 1 year later, a Daily Mail photographer found Eleanor Pruitt. She wasn't in Palm Beach or the Hamptons. She was at a Greyhound bus station in Boca Raton, Florida, a city synonymous with wealth, but she was in the part of it that no one ever photographed. She was living in a 600-square-foot condo with beige stucco walls, subsisting on the fumes of her former life. She was in line for a bus to Jacksonville to see her only remaining relative, a sister who hadn't spoken to her in 20 years. She wore a polyester pantsuit from a discount store. Her hair, no longer platinum, was a brassy, faded yellow, her dark roots showing. As she stood in the humid air, smelling of exhaust fumes and hot pavement, a young black mother and her daughter walked past her in the line, laughing. Eleanor flinched, her body tensed, her old familiar revulsion rising in her throat like bile. But it was no longer pure. It was now poisoned with a new, sharp, metallic taste, fear. They were just a mother and a child. But to her, they were a reminder of her exile. And that's the story of Eleanor Vance. It's a shocking, real-life example of what happens when entitlement and prejudice collide with quiet power. It's a reminder that the person you look down on today might just be the one who owns the very ground you're standing on, or in this case, the airline. What do you think was the worst part of her karma? The money, the social status, or the public humiliation? Let us know in the comments below. If you believe that kindness and respect are the only tickets that should matter, please hit that like button. Thank you for watching.